We cannot hide away from human population growth because, it underlies so many of the other problems. All these things we talk about wouldn't be a problem if there was the size of population that there was 500 years ago. We need to eat less meat. We need to stop land being used for cattle and growing grain for the billions of animals that we keep in our intensive farms. And then finally, we cannot hide away from human population growth because, it underlies so many of the other problems. All these things we talk about wouldn't be a problem if there was the size of population that there was 500 years ago.
What, huh? How did that happen? The Great Reset.
What we have to confront is a deep, systemic, and structural restructuring of our world. And this will take some time. And the world will look differently after we have gone through this transition process.
Can you translate that for us? What is he really talking about?
He's talking about us essentially giving up individual national sovereignty and giving up individual freedoms and turning over rule to experts. In fact, at his meeting in Davos, he said he looked at everyone in the room, and these are billionaires, millionaires, corporate heads, government bureaucrats, Hollywood celebrities, the royal family, Bill Gates. He looked at everyone and he said, we have in this room, we get to decide the future of the planet. I mean, that's the kind of maniacal James Bond villain attitude he actually has. So what's significant, though, about this G20 speech you just played, Ali, he is now being treated as a head of state. It's now a nation state. It's reached that level status at a G20 summit where he can go up there and talk about radical restructuring, systemic restructuring of the planet, and he gets literally the same VIP treatment. And what's amazing about that is, how did he get to this position of power? Well, in the book I go back, it's founded in 1971, and the key to the way the World Economic Forum is so powerful, they found a way for businesses, academics, and lobbyists and fundraisers to meet with politicians off the books out there.
We had to see the digital identity is not just a passport that you will have on your iPhone in a digital form. It entails just about everything the government would like to know about you. And yesterday in the Dutch media, we saw a perfect example of what it could entail in the near future. We had the CEO of one of the largest Dutch banks say, why don't we start with a personal carbon credit?
Oh.
A carbon wallet, she called it, actually. Yeah. So right in line with the plans that the World Economic Forum people have for us. And she said it in a way that was particularly funny. She said, well, if everyone gets an individual personal carbon credit, why don't we make it so that rich people who, for example, want to go on holiday a little too often can buy personal carbon credit from other people who, for example, can't afford buying plane tickets or eating meat too often. So we can that way swap it out.
Oh, so if Bill Gates or Leonardo DiCaprio's carbon footprint is getting a bit too big, then some peasant living in his hovel up country somewhere can sell his, and he can't afford to go to Saint-Tropez, but he'll be able to sell his carbon allowance to Leonardo DiCaprio so Leonardo can park his yacht in Saint-Tropez for a couple of extra days.
Exactly right. That's it. So what will happen is the rich will get richer, the poor will get poorer, and they're saying it openly as if it's not a controversial thing at all. It's neo-feudalism. That's what it is.
Die uitstootrechten for too much climate change, for using a... This might actually be your future dinner. That's because right now, globally, meat agriculture is being vilified for causing too much climate change, for using up too much land, for using up too much water, and so on and so forth. And as a part of the green agenda to fix all these meat-related problems, well, policies are being implemented across the entirety of the world, which are effectively handcuffing farmers and sometimes even completely crippling the farmers' operations. However, you might be wondering, if all of these meat and dairy and cattle farmers are put out of business in order to save the planet, what exactly are people going to eat? Where are people going to get their source of protein from? Well, fear not. That is exactly where insect farming comes in. For the past 10 or so years now, international organizations like the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, the European Union, and so on and so forth have been working relentlessly to push forward and to normalize the edible insect industry, which might help to explain why, seemingly all of a sudden, we're seeing all sorts of celebrities endorsing insect food. We're seeing media outlets across the world normalizing edible bugs, and we're even starting to see children have insects be introduced into their school lunch programs. However, in order to explain how we got to this point, let's start at the very beginning. 10 years ago, all the way back in the year 2013, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, they released this report right here titled Edible Insects, Prospects for Food and Feed Security. Now, this report of theirs, it outlined how there are going to be too many people on this planet in the near future and that the current model of meat production will not be adequate to feed them all. Here's specifically how the report began. Quote, "It is widely accepted that by 2050, the world will host 9 billion people. To accommodate this number, current food production will need to almost double. Land is scarce, and expanding the area devoted to farming is rarely a viable or sustainable option. Oceans are overfished, and climate change and related water shortages could have profound implications for food production. To meet the food and nutrition challenges of today, there are nearly 1 billion chronically hungry people worldwide, and tomorrow, what we eat and how we produce it needs to be reevaluated. Inefficiencies need to be rectified and food waste reduced. We need to find new ways of growing food." And of course, given the fact that this report is titled Edible Insects, you kind of see where they're going with this. Quote, "Edible insects have always been a part of human diets, but in some societies, there is a degree of distaste for their consumption. Insects offer a significant opportunity to merge traditional knowledge and modern science in both developed and developing countries." Now, this UN report, again, published 10 full years ago, well, it's now considered, in retrospect, one of the foundational documents in this effort to bring insect eating into mainstream Western culture. And just as a fun
starting in 2020 is never going to end unless enough of us wake up and say, to hell with it. You know, we're not going to comply with this nonsense anymore. And I think what's happening here is if we continue, we're going to end up, all of us, carrying digital ID. You know, you might think digital ID is no big deal, don't we have digital passports? But no, there's something coming, and it's definitely coming, that's different. So first, your passport, there's 190 different formats in the world. There isn't one format. What is coming now globally is a single format digital ID. Second, it will be what's called interoperable. When your ID pings the system, not only can it make a decision as to whether to allow you to enter a door or buy a product, but it can make a mark on that digital ID and edit it. That's not true of any ID at the moment. That's called interoperability, global format. And here's the worst part. It contains all of you, your health data, your unique ID data, your financial data, your driving history, where you live, what you've bought. That is what is coming down the pipe for us. If you don't believe me, then I'm just going to paint a picture as to why it's the last important decision free humans are ever going to make. And I'm going to refuse it, even though it may exclude me from banking, for example. I don't need digital ID. You don't need digital ID. Evidence for that? My last 63 years of my life. They need you to have it, the people who have run this pandemic. What else? What are they going to do with this? The other two things that are coming down the pike are the gradual erosion of cash. You will, all of you who are listening to me will be able to see that cash is getting harder to obtain and harder to use. And lots of supermarkets are getting rid of humans, so it's only a machine. And I promise you, as is happening in France and the UK where I live, they're abolishing the checkout assistant. You'll only be able to pay with a bank card or an app, no cash. And finally, you can check this out. All central banks are toying with what's called central bank digital currencies. You will bank with the central bank in your country. So now let me give you a scenario. You walk up to the shop door and you're required to beep your digital ID. So because we're moving into what has been described as the zero trust world. These are not my words. These are their words. Zero trust world. So you need to prove who you are at every moment. You wave your ID. If they've decided, so because I've said bad things on social media, they're not going to admit me to food stores, the door will not open. So this is how bad it is. Let's say they let me in the store, and I had a steak yesterday, and I go to the butcher's counter and I pick up some meat and I go to the automated checkout. The computer in the sky checks and says, you've already had 8 ounces of steak, nothing for you. And when I try and pay for it, the money won't pay for it. Or if they say, here's something that will frighten you, because this has happened in Britain, lockdown. Climate lockdowns are being mooted. It's absurd, but they are. If they say to you, you may not move more than 5 miles from your registered address, and you are 6 miles from home and go into a store, and you attempt to buy a bottle of water or a sandwich, your central bank digital currency and digital ID will prevent that transaction occurring. That's what is coming for us. So when they say, oh, you need a digital ID so you can prove who you are, tell them to, insert it somewhere else. You do not need digital ID. They need you to have, because that's the control mechanism. There are only 2 parts to it. Digital ID, interoperable, one format in the globe, and cashless CBDC. That's it. And then finally,
this is the book of Job, chapter 5. And I'll start at 14, and it says, they meet with darkness in the daytime, and grope in the noonday, as in the night. But he saveth the poor from the sword, from the mouth, and from the hand of the mighty. I like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakak Wadash. Double honors to my apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and peace and salutations to the hopeful elect. Let me read that again. Job 5 and 14. They meet with darkness in the daytime. Let's go into that word darkness, right? They meet with darkness. Strong's 28:22. Darkness, obscurity, darkness, secret place. Okay? Let's go into the root word. And it says Quashunk.
Strong's H2821. Chashach. Chashach.
To become, to be or become dark, grow dim, be darkened, be black, be hidden. Okay? So they're the real niggas, man. You see? Let's go to another scripture. Psalms 38:12, and it reads, they also that seek after my life lay snares for me, and they that seek my hurt speak mischievous things, and imagine deceits all the day long. Let's go into this word snares, right? See, everything is a trap. They also lay snares.
Strong's H5367. Nakash. Nakash.
Says to knock, strike, bring down, to strike down, to be thrust after, be impelled, to strike at, take aim at. So their aim is for Depop. Depop. Okay, the Depop. It says, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. First commandment of the Georgia Guidestones. The third commandment, right? Unite humanity with a living new language. A, implying one. First Thessalonians chapter 5 and 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Psalms 52 and 2, and it says, Thy tongue deviseth mischiefs, like a sharp razor working deceitfully. Thou lovest evil more than good, and lying rather than to speak righteous. Salah. Thou lovest all devouring words, O thou deceitful tongue. Shalom.